Good afternoon and welcome back to another episode of the Arrow Preacher Podcast. I am your host, the Arrow Preacher, and we are going to get into this situation going on. It is going to be a very quick one because I've got appointments. But first, I just asked that maybe I could potentially get some prayers from y'all. I had an incident this morning. My my heart rate got over 160 or got to 160, and I stayed there for a minute or so, and my pacemaker safety settings kicked in, and it dropped my heart rate to the 70s. And if you can imagine going from 160 to 70s in just a matter of seconds, how disorienting that could be, how awful that would feel. It's not great, and it was incredibly disturbing. I feel ashamed. I feel embarrassed by what happened today. I was in the middle of cardiac rehab, and that's when it happened. I just don't feel good about it. It's hard. It's hard having to monitor my heart rate all the time. It's hard to force my heart rate up there in physical exercise, because that's the only way that the heart heals and grows and gets stronger. But at the same time, I have to be very, very careful, and I have to monitor my heart rate very, very carefully, and it's just hard. It's not an easy thing to do. I'm now thinking about getting a different heart monitor that might alert me if I'm getting to a certain point. I might very well do that. But it was a rough day. So I've had a rough day. I've had a very emotional weekend. I've had a very very rough weekend. But regardless of what has been said to me, regardless of what has happened to me over the last couple weeks, I feel like I need to continue. I'm just trying to speak truth. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to speak truth from a biblical perspective, and putting a biblical perspective on the things that I am seeing with my own eyes. Not everybody appreciates that. Some people are very emotional about things, and they lash out, and they're mean and cruel with what they say. And that's hard. We all have our opinions, but when someone starts name calling and stuff like that, because my opinion might be different from theirs, I'm still human, and that still hurts my feelings. And it's something that I have to live with. If I'm going to continue to do this, I have to learn how to deal with that. But it's hard. So prayers for that as well. So as some of you may have seen, Representative Ilhan Omar was attacked during what looked like a town hall. She was sprayed with some sort of substance, and the guy was taken down by security, and she tried to rush the guy with her fist balled up. And so this is what I have written, and I'll just read it to y'all. Why wouldn't security have checked him coming in? If he was wearing a large baggy coat, even if he went through security, especially to see a representative, you would think that there would not just be searching for metals, but they would also make sure that you're not carrying anything harmful, because there are a lot of harmful things that are not metal. Especially with the advent of 3D printers, there's a lot you can do, so I would think a physical search would have been appropriate for people who are going to be that close to a representative. Why would she continue not knowing what kind of liquid it was? Here's the thing. And I wrote, it could have been a corrosive battery acid or urine, but instead of leaving, she continued. And while I only mentioned two substances, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of substances that would have been incredibly harmful to her if she did not remove those articles of clothing in an expedient fashion. Why would she walk towards the individual? Someone just assaulted you. If it was a harmful substance, what if he had other harmful weapons? Again, you can 3D print anything. If you wanted to, you could 3D print a plastic dagger and sharpen it. That would have, if he got through with a substance, if he just 3D printed a plastic dagger, why would you approach him? Like, that's what your security's for. That doesn't make any sense to me. But she did not remove her jacket. She didn't leave to do that. So people have said it seems like it was staged. The body language, her body language before the attack, her body language after the attack. The guy just being sort of weird and awkward and clumsy, and then falling and getting tackled by security after he was kind of already on the ground. Also, apparently, and again, this is just early reporting, apparently they didn't charge him with a federal crime, even though there are federal statutes that allows to be charged with a federal crime under those circumstances. It seems like he was just charged with third-degree assault charges, which, again, unless you get that substance tested, you don't know the degree of damage that substance could have caused, and by not, that coat becomes evidence. Therefore, you have to give the evidence to law enforcement so they can test the material and test the substance to see what it was. Depending on what the substance was, could very likely depend on the level of severity of the assault charges. But it doesn't seem like that happened. So some people say that this was a staged event. Now, I don't know if it is. I do not condone attacking anybody for any reason in these types of circumstances. The attack on Charlie Kirk was not okay. When someone threw a shoe at George Bush, not okay, right? If someone actually did attack Ilhan Omar, whether you agree or disagree or whatever with her politics, you don't attack the woman for anything. Like, that's not how you handle things in a first world country. You debate, you talk, you have conversations. You don't just go up and spray random stuff on people. You just don't do that. But the reason that I find this so unusual is because over the last few years, we have seen people actually be attacked on the street with stuff like battery acid, different kinds of acids, different kinds of corrosives that were incredibly harmful. We've seen people get attacked and sprayed by urine and stuff like that. So we've seen it. It's been in the news. So I would think that they would have reacted differently and spent more time making sure that they knew what the substance was rather than getting right back to the conversation. Also, there was another point that someone brought up of this is a staged event, and it was staged because, and I will give a few reasons why this could be, and I'm not saying that it is. I'm just stating it could be this, it could be this. That's all I'm doing, okay? So don't shoot the messenger. She is not only being investigated for her immigration status, which is true. The fraud of the system in her state, in which she co-wrote the laws that were passed, she has now become incredibly wealthy in a very short period of time. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of things that don't make sense. Is this to get people's mind off of the fact that she's being investigated for multiple avenues? If you wanted to take heat off yourself, if you wanted people to not look at you like you are the author of fraud and crime and embezzlement, stuff like that, then you make yourself look like the victim. It's not a new tactic. Now, I am not saying that's what she did. I'm just saying it's possible, based on what we see, there is potential evidence to show that that may be the case. So I'm just saying that we should consider the facts as the investigation continues. Again, he wasn't charged with a felony, which under statutes, there are federal laws against that. And because she is a federal representative, it would fall under federal. I'm just saying there are a few things that just don't add up, that don't quite make sense. Okay? So now I'm going to make the other side probably pretty mad. I want to condemn publicly President Trump for some of his statements. After the Alex Pretty incident, the president said that it was wrong for him to carry a firearm. I've heard people say that Alex was out to kill a lot of people. I have heard people say that he had 2 magazines, and I heard the Trump condemn that he had 2 magazines, and he said, well, you can do a lot of damage with that, and blah, blah, blah. Okay? I disagree with all of that, and here's why. Alex had a legal right as a citizen to carry, according to the Second Amendment, of carrying to Minnesota law. Here's where that is a little issue, though, is yes, he had a legal right to carry. However, if it's anything like my state, you have to carry an ID and you have to carry your concealed permit with you. That is the law. Okay? So by not having those things, he was in violation of the law. Here's the other thing. I understand that it looks like I do not think he was out there to cause harm. I do not think he was out there. Do I think he was an agitator? Yes. Do I think he was out there causing problems for the agents who were trying to do their job? Yes, I do. I think he was a protester. I think he was in the way. I don't think he was listening to law enforcement when they were giving him lawful instructions. That doesn't mean he deserved to get shot. Okay? The problem comes with this is once he engaged with the law enforcement while having a pistol on him, without telling the law enforcement officers he has a pistol, that escalates the probability of something going wrong. Okay? From what we see and from what we hear, that was never said. Now, I'm not saying this is a justifiable shooting. From my perspective, and again, I'm not law enforcement standing right there in the spot, it looks questionable to me. I'm just saying, I know that's going to make a lot of people mad. This one looks questionable to me. But again, I'm not in the mind of the officer, and a lot of investigation will have to continue. But what I am saying is I do not like what the president said. I do not like the fact that he isn't respecting the Second Amendment. And again, it doesn't matter if you're left or right. The Second Amendment isn't just for the right. Even though the left fights often against the Second Amendment, they still have a lawful right to carry. As long as you fall within the legal realm of the background check and all of that, you have a right to carry. And I'm not going to stand in someone's way of carrying a lawful firearm. But if you are going to carry, that means you are held to a higher standard. If you are going to carry, that means you don't. And I'm not even saying don't carry to a protest. Sure, you have every right to carry to a protest. As long as you remain on the sidelines, you don't engage, you stay away. If law enforcement comes up to you, you tell them that you have a firearm on you. Because that's what the rules are. But I don't appreciate the president and what he said. I don't appreciate some of the other individuals in government saying that he was out to do maximum damage and all of that. I don't believe that. Now, do I think he was wrong for what he did? and interfering and all that? Yes. Do I think that should have resulted in his death? No. And again, I think that the shooting was a questionable shoot. I'm not sold on the if it was justifiable or not. So that's my personal takeaway. And again, I know some people are going to be upset about it. Some people, even on the right, might be upset about it, and that's fine. I can take it. But I have always said I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to say the truth where I see the truth. And that's where I see the truth. I have my own personal opinion based on the video of the Renee Good situation. And I have my own personal opinion based on the officer shooting that involved the other guys and the shovel, even though there's not as much to go on there. And I have my opinions, and I'm allowed to have my opinions. And I'm allowed to share my opinions. But that doesn't mean that anybody should be coming at me and name calling and all that, because I'm not doing that to anybody else. So I would ask respect. Don't do it to me. All right? We can have reasonable conversations, but it doesn't mean I'm an evil human being. It doesn't mean that I'm lost. It doesn't mean that I'm misled, because I make judgments not based on what Fox News says, not based on what MSNBC says, not based on what ABC News says. I make judgments based on all of the evidence that I can possibly gather before I make a decision. As I think it was Walter Cronkite used to say, those are the facts, you decide. We need to get back to those are the facts, you decide. But I've seen recently, and I've even called it out, my local news misled people on a story. And I called it out, that they misled people on a story. And that is not okay for the news to omit important contextual facts to sway their readers to believe a certain thing. When you leave out certain things like that, you are putting your finger on the scale. And I think that is what's happening a lot. And I think it's happening on both the left and the right. People are putting their fingers on the scales, and it's making people think or believe certain things. And I think our school system has a lot to do with it, that we no longer allow critical thinking in our society, that it has to be one way or the other. It can't be a gray area. It can never be, this and this at the same time. And unfortunately, we see what's going on. But I will say this, what's going on in Minnesota, why isn't it happening everywhere else? Why is it only happening there? We're not seeing these, sure, there are small protests everywhere, but we're not seeing anything to the level that we are in Minnesota. Why is that? Well, largely one of the biggest reasons is because ICE is having the help of local law enforcement to carry out these warrants of these individuals that they are arresting. So when you have help and you're not having to go, into the streets and try to find these people and all that, yeah, if you have local law enforcement assistance, it goes much smoother. So, but anywho's, I got to get going. I hope everybody stays safe. If you're going to go out and protest, that's cool. Stay out of the way. You can protest, but that doesn't mean you can get in the way of ICE or Border Patrol or whoever. Just make sure you're staying out of the way. Make sure you're holding up your signs at a safe distance. That's fine. But make sure you're not interfering with local law enforcement. Make sure you're not impeding their ability to do their job. That's not okay. That's not what that's not what the freedom of protest is for. You have the right for peaceful assembly, and it must remain peaceful in order for you to do that. Up in Minnesota, I saw people trying to scream at the cops. At one point, they wanted the cops to fight ICE. Now they're screaming at the cops when the cops tell them that it's an unlawful assembly. So which one is it? You want the cops as your friend, or now the cops are your enemy? All within a few days. So, I'm just saying, which one is it? Do you want them as your friend or your enemy? Because you can't have both, right? Anyway, it just blows my mind. Okay, y'all, stay safe. Read your Bibles. know Scripture. Stop quoting Scripture if you don't actually know what you're talking about. I've seen people do that. I've seen it on the internet. People, spouting stuff. They don't know what they're talking about. Context matters, okay? So make sure y'all are doing what you're supposed to do. Y'all stay safe. All right. Bye, guys. Peace.